And that's why diet is integral to this process. The process of cleansing your mind, body, and soul, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Divine Trinity, and therefore allowing us as humans to achieve the point of life, which is to go.
The universe is on our side.
If you woke, then wake up, nigga.
Most of us can agree that the human body is made up of three core structures, right? The mind, the body, and the soul. The mind and the body seem to be well understood, but this soul structure continues to be a mystery for many. Alright, let's break them all down, starting with the mind. Firstly, and as many of you probably know, all is mind, right? The mind is an eternal element of our being. This is what we commonly call consciousness in living beings. Consciousness is a self-aware energy that is widely believed to be projected from the mind using electrochemical energy that can be represented by electromagnetic waveforms. Hence, your consciousness carries a specific frequency based on these waveforms, which is obviously subject to change based on your thought patterns at any given time. This, in my opinion, is what some would call God. Not a single entity, but our combined essence of electromagnetic frequencies, what we would call the conscious mind of the collective. The process of thinking is simply one's conscious mind just tuning or dialing in to information from the universal field of consciousness. But what prefaces thought? Think about it. I think it's intent. Intent is the original search engine of a living being. Our actions stem from our thoughts. Our thoughts stem from our desires or intent. And our intentions are determined by our level of conscious awareness. I'm sure most of you would be somewhat familiar with the 4 stages of consciousness, that being the unconscious, the conscious, the superconscious, and the subconscious. We can almost say that intent is separate from even the brain itself, as the act of turning the intent into thought, then manifesting it into reality, can be seen as the process of the heart, right? Think of your heart's desire, transmitting that information to the brain, which then processes that data and converts it into action via our physical body. Fucking face is so red, bro. I'm gonna turn the air conditioner on. The conditions of one's heart or intent determines the nature of the information that they search for. The conditions of one's brain programming determines the quality and the accuracy of which that information will be filtered and then processed. The condition of one's bodily organs determines the outcome of actioning one's intellectual interpretation. The sum condition of one's intent plus processing or brain function is what we would call intelligence. We've all heard the saying, I am because I think, and therefore I think because I am. The best comparative example of what I've just explained is looking at the internet and computers. In fact, they are both a physical manifestation of the metaphysical reality just described. We all know the internet doesn't have a fixed or even a tangible space, time, or shape. It is omnipresent, meaning it exists everywhere, all the time, easily accessible if you have the right tools. The internet is comparatively a physical manifestation of that eternal source energy, what some would call ether, or God, or our combined electromagnetic essence, as I described before. Similarly, we also need signals and transmitters to access the internet, just like humans need intention and thought to access the ether field. And just like in humans, satellite signals are like the heart of the internet, and this is where the entire process begins, right? The job of the satellite signal antenna is to make connection with the computer. At this point, information is then transmitted, usually via Ethernet cables, into a programmed computer microchip for processing. This is the exact same process that occurs within the human mind frame. Now hold on, I'm going somewhere. In humans, our intent is like the satellite signal, our thoughts are like the Ethernet cable, and our brains are like the computer's processor that processes the information. Satellite towers, antennas, and microchips are what we might call the internet's hardware. And likewise, in humans, our hardware can be said to be our hearts, brains, cells, and the connective pathways that form in between what can be said to be our human hardware. Comparatively, a computer's mainframe is similar to that of a human body. A computer's screen is comparatively similar to the face of a human. The cameras are like eyes, and the speakers and microphones like ears and your mouth. All of the above are what we might call hardware in humans. Both computer and human hardware and software rely on intelligent conscious energy to initiate and activate action for a change to be made. To summarize, the function of a computer is dependent on first, the strength of the signal, then the quality of transmission, then the processing capacity, and then the quality of the hardware. Now, naturally, human beings have varying degrees of intent and brain function. Somebody with pure intent is more likely to search for purer information. And if that someone has healthy brain function to process that information, it is likely that the information will be less filtered, with knowledge being the ultimate power that one can attain, right? Knowledge is power. But why does knowledge empower us? Knowledge empowers us by expanding and enhancing our conscious awareness. It is the currency that fuels our conscious awareness, which in turn heightens our perspective of life experience overall. The purer our intentions are, the purer our thoughts will be. The purer our thoughts, the purer the knowledge that we end up receiving and using to our benefit in, our everyday lives. And of course, the purer the knowledge, the purer our actions should be. Pure intelligence fuels more processing power to further access purer and purer information, thus creating a perpetual cycle of knowledge expansion and self-awareness. The meaning of life is to expand our conscious awareness beyond the limits of our current paradigm, thereby allowing us to ascend into a higher paradigm of experience. Now, obviously, not everybody has the same meaning for life, right? If this isn't your truth, reject it. If you don't resonate with it, don't watch the video. But this is what many religious folk would call drawing one's mind closer to God. Alright, let's start talking about the body now. The physical body exists in a state that we call matter. And unlike the mind, which is a metaphysical aspect of our being, which consists of light, sound, and electromagnetic waves, the body is made up of tangible chemical compounds consisting of atoms, particles, and molecules that are physically quantifiable. The mind element of our being is entirely consistent regardless of space or time, just like the internet is. Whereas the physical element of us is impermanent, transient, and embedded into a specific space and time within the reality that we are right now experiencing. In other words, our consciousness remains as a frequency regardless of where, when, or what it is in. However, the body's energy structure transmutes from one state to another in relation to the space and time it interacts and exists within. The body is physically tangible, right? Outwardly with our 5 common senses. Therefore, it is so much easier to study by physical observation and experimentation. But having said that, processing these observations is a bit more complicated. Now, let's talk about diseases, and I am going somewhere. We are usually easily able to determine the effect of a disease, but not always the cause. When we are able to intelligently determine the real cause of bodily diseases, we can then take the necessary action to ease the dis-ease with great effect and minimal adverse effect. So, hypothetically, we could eliminate every disease in existence by simply knowing the original action that caused the reaction within the human body, and then take action to affect that original defective action. So effectively what I'm talking about is prevention. Prevention is not better than the cure. Prevention is the cure. However, as you may know, this is easier said than done. One cannot prevent something without the eventual knowledge of its cause and effect. Once again, knowledge is the key. Intelligent information is the key. Like we said before, intelligence is the sum total of pure intention, a healthy mind, and virtuous action. So we can say that the mind and the body are somewhat reminiscent of 2 separate entities that are symbiotically collaborating on our experience of existence, even though one is metaphysical and the other is physical. This begs the question, how real is the physical reality with which we experience if we can experience the same metaphysical reality inside our own minds or in a hyper-realistic video game? Think about augmented reality or when you dream and have really, really intense dreams. Some philosophers agree that the physical itself could easily be an illusion that is created and only perceived through the mind. Hence, all is mind. However, the physical is also real in a different context because it allows the mind to objectively express and experience itself. Now, this is why I brought the analogy up, because I want you to think about it through the lens of a computer. A hardware computer without software information is useless. And likewise, software information without hardware output is pointless. The physical hardware that we call our body has a use, which is to give software, our mind, a point. The point of the mind is to use the body. Now, this allows our collective conscious energy to experience itself subjectively and objectively at the very same time, simultaneously. And this is what may cause the illusion of separation. Why? Well, why not? After all, existence without experience is pointless, which could be a significant factor in making the overall conclusion that the point of existence is experience. Experience naturally evokes a process of learning, and learning implies expansion and growth. Growth, of course, is the process of getting from one point to another, and that is the point. However, it is the journey that matters, because although a video game is also made to get from start to end, or A to B, the objective is to experience something we call fun along the journey. But now we ask the question as humans, what are we growing from? Where are we growing to? And how does this process of expansion and growth actually transpire? Let's talk about the soul now. I'm going somewhere, so stay tuned. What is the soul? Like we are in between the solar system above our head or the souls below our feet, the soul within us is in the middle, acting like a bridge of everything. Now bear in mind that the process of selling something or calling something sold is the process of moving something from point A to point B, which is facilitated by an injection of some sort of currency or value. There is much contention, as you would know, as to what the soul actually is. But most people are somewhere within the territory of calling your soul your consciousness. And this may be true to a degree. Consciousness is likely within the soul, and the soul is likely the bridge that links the physical body to the metaphysical mind/consciousness. Just like how computers have silicon as a conductor to connect software information to the hardware mainframe. Similarly, humans have something we might call the soul that acts as a bridge between the conscious mind and the physical body. The soul is the silicon of a human being. Naturally, because the soul is a bridge, it must have properties to accommodate both elements of physicality and metaphysicality. Therefore, a soul must be malleable with physical qualities within a metaphysical state. Now, the only element in the universe with such transitional qualities is plasma. So, before we understand the soul, we have to understand plasma. It is now well established that plasma is the most abundant substance in the universe. It is believed that 99% of matter in the visible universe is plasma. Plasma is also a form called a state of matter, like solids, liquids, and gases. So plasma is sometimes referred to as the fourth state of matter. Plasma is created by adding energy to a gas so that its atoms and molecules are separate into negatively charged electrons and positively charged ions. This process is called ionization. It's also interesting that plasma is said to be a better conductor of electricity than even copper. Unlike other states of matter, the charged particles of plasma react very strongly to electromagnetic fields. If plasma loses heat, the ions will reform into a gas. When the atoms in the gas are broken up, the pieces are called electrons and ions because these pieces have an electric charge. They are pulled together and pushed apart by electric and magnetic fields. This makes plasma act differently from a gas. For example, magnetic fields can be used to hold plasma, but not to hold a gas. Stars, including the sun, are mostly made up of this thing that we call plasma. Sometimes on our Earth, we can partially see two electromagnetic plasma fields in the aurora borealis and the aurora australis. If you've never watched a video about how the northern or the southern lights are actually made, then I would urge you to do it because it's so interesting, all to do with the sun. And it's interesting that science tells us that stars contain very high pressurized plasma and that most of the elements of our body come from stars. Plasma is in plants, water, the air, and even our bodies. In humans, plasma can be found as a diffused liquid in our blood that helps carry blood cells around the body. Plasma in the body is made up of over 90% water and other life-sustaining compounds. Plasma does not have a definitive color. It can emit all colors across the full spectrum of light, dependent on the levels of ionized energy that it has. Within the body, nitrogen is key in understanding the structure of bodily plasma. Nitrogen is abundant in the environment, but we cannot easily absorb it directly from air or soil. We absorb it best from green plants and from microbes that convert it into a usable form for humans, what is called a fixed reactive form. Nitrogen is the element that builds amino acids in our body, which in turn makes proteins. And some of you may know that it is also needed to form nucleic acids, which end up forming your DNA and RNA. Plasma in the human body is usually yellow. Low energy nitrogen creates yellow plasma, and high energy nitrogen creates violet plasma. Violet is the color at the end of the visible light spectrum between blue and ultraviolet. Plasma in its purest form appears mainly in two colors, red and blue. These colors come from the main fuel for pure plasma, which is hydrogen, the most abundant chemical element in the entire universe to our knowledge right now. Now, this is just like how plasma is the most abundant state of matter in the entire universe. But why am I even telling you this? Because inner freedom begins with outward expression, experience, and growth. All the things that are the meaning of life. And all the ingredients we need to do this are found around us in nature. Direct sources can include the sun, which gives us hydrogen electric energy, which we can absorb by sunbathing or solar gazing. The moon, which gives us magnetic energy in the form of ions, especially in a full moon. And why is that? Well, during a full moon, there is an increase in the positive ion ratios. This is a time when the positive ions in the air outnumber the negative ions by about a ratio of 3-1. Spending time in the moonlight is also good. Food, organic plants, fruits, vegetables, and herbs contain electromagnetic photonic light in the form of nitrogen. So it is crucial that we consume as many of these foods as possible. And water. Drink as much hydrogenated water as possible. Water is most hydrogenated when it is distilled. Lightning strikes create plasma through a very strong jolt of electricity. Water can easily be distilled by using chemical/natural distillers and distillation processes. Following these processes begins the inner dye process. When I say dye, I mean dye, like two. Sometimes it's also referred to as bi. Distilling or distilling our plasmic blood, thereby diffusing or diffusing impurities, which then create a dielectric difference or difference, merging from red to blue. And that's why diet is integral to this process. The process of cleansing your mind, body, and soul, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, the Divine Trinity, and therefore allowing us as humans to achieve the point of life, which is to grow and learn, to be ever closer to God, or universal consciousness, by merging red with blue to become purple, or body with mind to experience your soul. No wonder purple has always been heralded as a color of royalty, and blue and red is so frequently pitted against one another.